state and use effects to change the state of our page. We're using the use params, which I believe is from the app nav. Maybe not.
Yeah, I think we use the use params on the article detail page or the article page.
Okay, yes. And then we are pulling in info from the API that we have, and then information from the article list in order to try and populate the typos.
Gotcha. And then you said you wired this up. So are you not getting data? Does your application run? Does it give you errors? Kind of where are we with that?
The application runs.
Great.
Whenever I go to the home page, it gives me the full list of articles. If I click on an article from there, it goes to the correct article.
Gotcha. Are you able to share your browser on the same screen here?
Not at the same time, no.
All right, it might be beneficial to kind of look at that if it's not too difficult to get those going.
Let's see.
Well, are you going to have to switch back and forth? Like, could you somehow get them both on the same screen?
I think so. I think I'm going to have to do the same. Now,
oh, that's me.
Are you able to see both right now or just the page?
I can only see your browser.
Okay. All right. So, like I said, whenever I'm switching between the categories, I've got nothing.
Okay.
Whenever I go to the main page, then I've got the full list of articles. I can click on any of the articles and it's the correct one.
Great. Okay, so yeah, let's try to figure out why your section pages are not working here. Okay, so we are able to get to the page. We're calling fetch articles by section name. So it's always good to kind of just like try to figure out where the wire is maybe not connected. So the first thing I might ask you to do, Morgan, is can you take me to fetch articles by section, that API function?
Yes. Fetch articles by section.
Okay, so we want to make sure that our request here is working correctly. So I would, if you can, just kind of copy everything that you have in fetch right now in that fetch call. Sorry, not the function, the fetch where you have the base URL and then the question mark filter. Yep. Let's copy all of that text. And then let's go over to your browser.
Okay.
It's going to be a lot of switching here, I think.
Unfortunately.
Okay, so in your browser, just on a new tab, let's navigate to localhost 3001. Yep, we could use this and then paste in everything you just copied at the end of this URL. And we need to modify it. So we get rid of base URL. That is what localhost 3001 API/articles is. You get rid of the $sign and the tick mark and the curly braces there also. Okay. Okay. So now we have question mark filter where section. So we need to replace the $sign section with just some random, not random, but some value. So let's put in opinion for that value. So opinion is one of our sections. Let's hit enter there. I think we're missing a curly brace at the end. Potentially.
Oh, I'm supposed to. Yep.
So let's give that a try. Let's see if that works. All right, so we got some data back. Notice that every one of these sections are opinion. So it looks like that request is working well. Now that missing curly brace, I don't know if that was a bad copy and paste or was that actually missing from your code?
No, I accidentally erased too many curly braces.
Gotcha. Okay, so then we verified that this call should be working. So that's the first thing I would definitely want to check. And all right, we're good there. So let's go back to your code.
Is there a hotkey button for this?
Do you have two monitors?
I do.
All right, can you not put the browser from one on the other or that one?
So I have to use Zoom through the browser. And so it only, like I can take my code and move it over and it's on the same monitor now,
Gotcha.
but I'm pretty sure you can't see it right now, right?
Yeah, you're not sharing your screen right now, I don't think.
Okay.
But we should be able to see if you layer them on top. I mean, it might be kind of awkward to have all that, but usually when I'm presenting, I can't see any of you guys really.
Let me see if that works. So I now have both the both VS Code and the React app localhost 3000 on the same page.
Interesting. That does not work. All right. I wonder if the web browser just has limitations there. All right. Well, anyway, so we verified that our fetch should be working. We got the right number of curly braces. Yeah, that looks good. All right. So given that, let's kind of move on to checking what else could be going wrong here. So you have a console log. You're checking data. Does anyone else see anything that could be wrong here? I'm trying to spot it myself. So
Can you scroll down on your section page?
Morgan, did you, so yeah, I see you have a console log there with some like the section name and the asterisks. Were you able to verify if those are getting printed out or not getting printed out?
They are not getting printed out.
Ooh, that is not good. So we have
Yeah,
our
so it's
use
trying to figure
effect. Use effect has a dependency of section name, but that should fire the initial render and then anytime section name updates. So let's go back to your browser and check the console. That should have some good stuff in it, something in there for us to spy on. Okay, so this is the home page, right? Let's go to a section page. All right, so we got a warning. The warning should be fine, I think. Wait, let's see. What that warning says is functions are not valid as a React child. This may happen if you return components. Yeah, that's an interesting warning. That might be kind of pointing to what's going on here. So it's not anywhere in your code. Can you click on a few tabs up there, the opinion, world, national? Just want to see if anything happens.
Sure.
All right, so URL's updating, but we're not seeing anything here. Why would that be? Okay, I'm going to ask you to go back. Go for it.
It's calling from index.js line 1, which
Yeah, I think
is
that's,
import React from React.
yeah, I think that's just going to, yeah, those errors don't always kind of tell you exactly where it might be. So let's try to take a look. But it looks like there might be something, one of your renders might be doing something unexpected here.
Okay.
Okay. Hopefully we don't have to switch as much once we find it. All right, so
Yeah,
you're.
I was looking at the article list is properly within the brackets, and then we have the span, which is just the text.
All right. So we go to your router. Maybe your router is not wired up correctly, potentially.
App.js.
Oh, yes. So here we have sections, a section name element is section page. That's what I would expect. Oh, I see the issue. So
Section page.
yeah, notice your element, you don't have a component there. You're calling, so notice how for article ID and for homepage, you have an actual component in angle brackets. Yeah, here, I think we're just passing it the functional component instead of the rendered component. Yeah, so that likely will make a difference.
Amazing.
All right, group
That
troubleshooting. Again, you guys have my back all the time when I make mistakes, so always good to have extra set of eyes. But cool, did that resolve it, Morgan? Then?
Wait, I'm
Yes.
sorry. I scrolled away for a second and I missed the solution. Could
Oh,
you?
you missed it. You got to catch the rerun, Duncan. No, it was just an issue with the routing here. So in his route for your element property, you want to actually give it the rendered component, as in with angle brackets. You don't want to pass it just the functional component name, which was happening before. So again, what kind of led me to this was looking at the error message that said, hey, something's being rendered incorrectly. So thought we'd give this a check, and yeah, that seems to have fixed it. So yeah, it looks like everything else is working fine. All right, cool. So given that, let's kind of move on to our search functionality. So can someone remind us of what we want to add here? We could read the README, but if anyone remembers what we're trying to accomplish.
The search button?
Yeah, so we want to add a search. I think specifically the directions say we want to add it to the homepage initially, but then we got some extra stretch goals. Let's focus on the homepage. So we're asked to add a search page or a search capabilities to the homepage. So the first thing we want to do is implement an API that can properly filter the results for us. So let's go to Articles API and kind of get that going there. All right, so if you're following the README, again, if you don't have the README up, you just kind of take my word for it, but we're gonna be creating another kind of fetch method here that's going to be similar to the section, but instead of passing that specific filter, we need to pass a different filter. So Morgan, I'm gonna probably point you to the curriculum page if you have that handy somewhere. You don't have to bring it up, but there's a snippet of code that shows us what the filter should look like.
I think Morgan crashed.
All right, Morgan, you still with us? All right, I think he just gave up. He's like, I'm tired of switching. I feel like there's got to be a way to, even with the web version, to get both on. But again, I'm not using the web version. So, all right, Seth, I think you're our next man up. Do you have code that you could? Oh, he was ready to go. All right. So, Seth, have you started all right, you copied the filter section or articles by section. Great. Let's try to modify it now. So we want to filter articles by title or whatever you want to call it. So let's create a new function that's going to take in a new parameter. So this is going to be when the user is typing something, we'll capture what they type, pass it into here, and then we want to use that title to do a partial search. So if you look at the JavaScript on the right side here, Seth, yeah, that JavaScript snippet, let's just copy that and put that into our filter. It's going to be a little tedious to get that in there, but.
So you're talking about like place it right there?
Yep, so everything we have there, you're gonna need to remove some curly braces eventually. So we have filter. So let's get rid of one set of curly braces on the outer side. All right, and then can you condense all that space?
What I did is I set myself up a filter variable, and then I built a normal JavaScript object, and then I just did JSON.stringify that object inside the string literal.
No, that could work too.
What do you want me to do on this one though, Ankur?
I'll just say delete all the white space. So we have a lot of new lines. I don't think those will play well. So just condense that all into one line. It's gonna look kind of awkward, and let's make sure we have correct brackets. We have 3 opening brackets and 3 closing brackets. That's good. All right. So
Is that good?
yeah. So yeah, we got rid of the new lines. I just don't want those causing issues. But now we have our search string. I don't think the space issue matters, which will be fine for now. Let's take what you have here. Can we go to a browser and make sure we could use this filter to search by title? So we're going to go to our server, which is on localhost 3001. Again, we just want to verify that the API call works before we try to use it. All right, and then yeah, can you paste in? No, keep that there. Sorry. Yeah, so keep that, and then you want a question mark, and then paste in the items you copied or you had in your articles API. Yeah, so everything after that question mark. Yep. Yep. Okay, that looks Good. All right, so we want to replace text to search for with something that might be a match. So I think Nemo, if you search for Nemo, there should be a few example or matches for that. Let's hit enter there. All right, did we get articles with Nemo in the title?
Yes, we
I
did.
think we did.
Nemo, 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 and Nemo.
All right, finding Nemo, great. All right, so our call is working. That's a check, we could check off the list, so that looks good. All right, let's go back to our code now. So we know that this should be working, assuming nothing else goes haywire. So our fetch articles by title is good to go, not too much effort. We just kind of copied the section getter and modified it for title. Now we can proceed to go to our homepage. So our homepage is the one we're going to add our search functionality to first. Again, there's a stretch goal to kind of add it to other pages. So let's go to our homepage.
Do you want me to replace the title and throw it in here as?
Oh, yes, we do want to do that. So text to search for is just a placeholder. We actually want to do some string interpolation for that value. Cool. All right, I think that should take care of that. Thanks for catching that.
Quick question on line 28. Do you need the quotes around the text interpolation there, or can you remove them? I'm just curious.
I believe you need it because this needs to be a JSON format. So JSON format's kind of particular. You need it. Pretty sure you need those quotes. You could try it in your browser. Again, if anyone's playing along at home, you can just put that in your browser, take away the quotes, and see if it works. Guessing it's not going to work, but hey, could be wrong.
Thanks.
I think you need to export too, right? Or no?
Yep. Good call, Daniel. Yep. So we created a new function. We need to export it out of here so we can use it from an import.
I would have never caught that.
Okay, cool. So we got that. All right, so let's go to our homepage now and add some ability to enter in some data. So there's many ways we do this. Again, we just ultimately we need some way to get user input. I think the example that we have on the curriculum page uses some Bootstrap components. You guys can go totally follow that and add some Bootstrap components, but we want to just kind of do this as quick as possible. I'd say just add some input elements where the user can type something in. So yeah, in your render there, could you maybe add an input element? And then let's give it an ID because we're going to need to reference it. All right, and then we don't have to, but you can add a placeholder attribute so that we have some nice prompt for the user, kind of like using that feature. There we go, perfect. And then we need a button to submit, like, actually, no, I guess in this case, we don't want a button. I think the directions kind of have it dynamically changing. So for our input elements, let's add an on change event handler. So again, you can go the button route. I would maybe argue the button one might be a little better because you're not constantly making API requests, but totally up to you how you want to implement the search. So this on change, anytime the user types something, we'll want to capture the value they typed and pass along to our API call. So how might we go about doing this?
So we want to capture whatever they type. So my mind kind of starts going towards like this ID, inner HTML or value, something like that.
Yep, we're going to be using, yes, we're going to be using dot value. So inner HTML is a good thought, but that's not for inputs. Inputs use a dot, have a value attribute. So yep, so our on change is going to be calling some handler. So let's create a handler function here. All right, so we're going to call handle input. So let's define the body of that. And yep, so we saw Seth just added an anonymous function here. One thing to keep in mind is if we are not passing in a parameter, technically speaking, we don't need to create an anonymous function. We can just simply pass handle input directly. Again, it's not wrong by creating an anonymous function here, but just know if you need a parameter in your handler function that you need to pass, then you absolutely need an anonymous function. If you do not need a parameter pass, you can just pass the function kind of plain without parentheses. All right, cool. So let's create our handle inputs handler somewhere. All right, so again, this handler is going to respond anytime the user makes a change to the input. this handler is going to be called, and we want to somehow get the value that they entered. Now, there's a few ways we can go about this. Let's get a tag team member in here. Brian Slusher, do you have any ideas on how we could get the user input in this handler? There are at least two ways I know how we can do it.
Yeah. So handle input. I'm still trying to wrap my head around yesterday's stuff.
Gotcha.
So,
That's right. I mean, yep. That's right. If we're still kind of figuring this out, but yeah. So there's two ways generally that I would go about doing this. I'd say the slightly easier way is to pass an event, but that's kind of like coming out of nowhere. The other way is we could use document.getElementById. Since we gave our input an ID, we should be able to get that element back and then use .value off of it. So Seth, which way do you want to go? Do you want to use the event or do you want to use the document?
I think maybe the event would be better because haven't you guys said that we shouldn't use the document, like the retrieval function like that?
Oh, I guess I'm not familiar with limitations on that. Tom, was there any note on get document or document.getElementById? All right, not sure. So
I asked a question about that because to me it was confusing. Like I thought the old like JavaScript way, if we're just using vanilla JavaScript, was just to get element by ID or whatever the case. That's pretty easy. But then when we switched over to React, we were just using a state change, right? An on change to grab the value. And I thought if we were using React, that would be the appropriate way to do it, as opposed to going back to the get element by ID. So that was a question that I asked that I think Seth might be referencing, or someone else brought it up as well.
Gotcha,
so I just don't know, like, where is the line? Is this a design decision, or is there like a convention that we should follow?
Yeah, no, I appreciate the context there. As far as my knowledge is concerned, doing get element by ID is totally valid. Again, at the end of the day, your React code gets boiled down to JavaScript. We're writing JavaScript here. Actually, we're writing a JavaScript function, so we should be able to use it. Again, your JSX gets boiled down to JavaScript at the end of the day also. So again, this, as complicated as React might be, it is just writing JavaScript. Again, React is just doing a lot of the work behind the scenes. So yeah, one way is we can use document.getElementById because we have an ID on our input, and that's the item that's changing. Or we can use an event. I would say the event's probably the slightly more appropriate way to do it because like that information is passed to us already. So this is something we covered, I think, in HTML week. But yeah, I think Seth's kind of clued in here. So by default, your browser will automatically supply you an object representing the event that just occurred with a wealth of information. And this information will be what element was in, create this event, where's your mouse position, maybe some other states of your browser. But this event, again, objects automatically pass to you. But since we're doing stuff a little awkwardly on line 27, maybe not awkwardly, sorry, excuse my words, but we are creating an anonymous function and calling handle input with no parameters. So in order to capture the event, we need to accept the event from the anonymous function side and pass it along to our handler. Again, this is something automatically passed by the browser to any event handler that you create. If you don't want the event, you don't have to accept it. So if you didn't want the event object, we just simply not pass it from our anonymous function there. So yep, console logging events, that's a great idea.
So Ankur, just so I'm clear, on line, I guess it's line 28, or I'm sorry, line 28, we have to have the word event in there on the left-hand side. And on the right-hand side, it's not going to get passed. Like, it's not going to get passed unless we put that in there. Is that correct?
Yes, and just to clarify, that event word on line 28, that's just a variable. We can name it EVT, we can name it E, we can name it donuts. It is up to us. It's just a variable that's capturing whoever is calling this function. In this case, like your browser is calling the unchanged method because the user's typing something. The browser is going to call your handler with an event object. So we just need to capture it. And then this anonymous function is capturing a variable and then calling another handler and passing that event object to it. So it's kind of like a lot of hand transfers here. But eventually we get the event object, we're console logging it. Yeah, let's kind of inspect it here. Let's take it piece by piece. again, this is going back to the HTML, but again, this event happens for pretty much any thing we're doing. So we have our input here that Seth added. We're typing hello, and notice we get this input event that has a lot of items in it. If you can span the triangle thing, yeah. So here, again, this is all the information that's contained in it. A lot of it I've never really dealt with. But the key thing here is there's something called current target, and there's also something called target. Now, this is slightly confusing. It kind of threw me for a bit. We can use target. Target should be totally fine. I think normally we use current target, but one thing that you guys might kind of ask is, well, isn't current target null right now? Yes and no. If you print out the event to the console, it's going to show up as null, but that value is not actually null. I know that's super confusing. I didn't even know that until I Googled it and was like, all right, why am I seeing null when I can actually reference it? It just has to do with the fact that we're throwing something out to the console. It's no longer in scope. Again, we can use current target if we want to. Yeah, I'm not sure if that would even work, but maybe it will. It's a lot of data there.
Yeah, I left a lot of console
No, that's
log
fine. It's
stuff
totally
in
fine.
there.
All right, so there we go. So now Seth changed it to actually accessing the element. So now we can see that we are getting the input element that actually generated this event. So again, you can use target, you can use current target. I don't know if which one's better than the other. I see current target more often. There's a difference that can be had because I think the control that sent the event might not be the one handling it or something like that, but we can forget the details there. All right, so let's go back to our coding window. All right, so we have this event object. We could get current target, which is going to give us that input element back. We do that input element dot value. That's going to give us the exact value that's in that input control at this given time. So Seth, could you grab the event, the input value out, and let's grab it into a variable, let's say.
So I was thinking about why you wouldn't want to use, document.getElement by ID for this type of situation.
Okay.
And I think probably the best reason is because if, let's say, I wanted to create a component that was an input, and I make that input grab some element with an ID off the page, well, if I'm creating a component, the reason to do that is to make it so I can use it again and again and again. Now all of a sudden, I've created 5 components that all have created an input with the same ID, and well, so that's gonna stop working immediately. So
Yes, yeah, I mean, yeah, usually want to avoid duplicate IDs, but I guess if you have components, they might kind of have generic IDs in there. That's true. Again, yeah, I'm not the sole authority on best practices for React, but I think it's generally fine to use document ID. But if we don't need to use it, I guess, yeah, we don't have to in this case. So we're getting input value. Thank you, Seth, for console logging that, giving us that nice mesmerizing demo of all the words piling in there. All right, so we have our input value. Great. What do we want to do now?
I have a quick question.
Sure.
So Seth is he's setting input value to event with current target in brackets. Okay. That's the same thing as event that target that value, right?
Yep, you got it. Yeah, so it's just different syntax. So you could do dot current target because it's an object. So you can do square brackets, you can use dot, both should work. But yeah, great observation there. So we're getting an input value. Anyone have a suggestion on what should we do with this input value?
Should we update the state?
What state will we update?
Title, state, I don't know.
Yeah, I think you have the answer there. So it's that we want to create a state value because now we need to modify something like the user is giving us input. When we don't want just a local variable, we don't want to use articles because that's totally something separate. So yeah, I think we're going to need to add a new state value here so that whenever it gets modified, React knows, hey, I need to rerun this component and do something. All right, we're going to call it title and set titles just to keep that consistent. All right, could you capitalize the second T in title just for my benefit? There we go, thanks. All right, so now we have a new state value, and this should be tracking what the user's inputting. So how do we take the user value and update it to our states?
Do you want me to say it?
Yeah, go for it.
Yeah, I think it's a set title. We can just call it on line 25 set title and then have it bracket user input or input value.
Yep. All right, perfect. So this should update our state. Now this, finally, after all this, this is where we get to the stuff we were talking about today. Then hopefully this will make sense. So now we're updating title. Keep in mind that title is nothing that we're rendering to the screen. Title does not impact our render at all, right? We're just showing article lists. The only thing that updates kind of that our rendering is dependent on is the value of articles, which is a collection of articles that we're going to be getting. However, title does impact what articles we should be getting. So now this is the key reason why useEffect needs to be used here, because we're updating a state value. Again, state value updates are asynchronous. So we don't know exactly when the title is going to update for React purposes, but when React does eventually update the state value of title, we need to react to that. Sorry, I'm using the word react multiple times. Basically, when title updates properly, like when React gets to it, like React scheduled it, when we call set title, it's going to be asynchronous. So React will eventually do it. Once React completes that process of updating the state value, we want to do something extra. And that extra needs to be done in the useEffect, because useEffect is going to be waiting on that notification that, hey, this state value was updated, do your thing now. So let's introduce a useEffect here. And I guess we already have one, perfect. So we have a useEffect already. Let's ask Susan. Susan, the useEffect that we have on line 14, can you tell me when that's going to be triggered and why it's only, like what's controlling what it's doing and what is it gonna do? I don't know if that was a good question, but.
I'm not sure.
Okay,
This
so.
is all very confusing.
Gotcha, okay. So Susan, do you remember what the empty brackets in the useEffect does?
Oh, that's where you would put a state value if you want it to render when the state updates.
Yep, absolutely. So right now with the code we had, as Seth has good commenting here, empty brackets means this will only trigger on the initial render. So when we go to the home page of the first time, we're going to run the logic in that useEffect. So it looks like the logic we're calling fetch articles. And then once we get the articles, we set the response data or the data we get back as our article list. So that is what we want with our homepage. But now we added another condition where, hey, if the user is typing a search value, we need to get the articles again because of that. So we could add a state value here of title and fetch articles that way, or we could add another useEffect that only will update when title is going. So do you guys have a preference?
I haven't done two useEffects on the same page yet.
Okay.
I don't think I've had the cost to do that. So
yeah, we could do this. So again, it can be achieved with one or two. So let's create another useEffect. Again, there's nothing stopping us from creating this. All right, so this useEffect only should fire when the title changes. So this will use our new articles API function that we created. So instead of calling fetch articles, we want to call, I think it was fetch articles by title. All right, so what value are we going to pass there? Yep, our title state value. All right, so again, this useEffect, just to kind of clarify what it's doing, we're saying anytime the title state value gets actually updated by React, right? We want to do something extra after that. So we're saying, all right, the title has been updated. Great, now we want to go get some filtered results using that title. But there's one small caveat issue here. Since we are using another useEffect, this goes back to our lecture again, totally understandable if you guys kind of forgot everything from lecture, but when we have a useEffect is going to fire every single first time we render something and every update to the state value. So the second useEffect that Seth has written is going to fire when we initially render the page and when we update the value of title. We probably don't want to do the initial request, because that's going to be essentially doing fetch articles from the first use effect. And then after that, we're going to do another fetch articles by title request. So any ideas on how we can maybe circumvent this without kind of getting too involved into it?
Use a
Okay.
use ref.
What was that, Kevin?
Would you use a use ref?
Yeah, so we could use our use ref. We went over that a bit in lecture. That is a little more complicated and definitely a lot more foreign in terms of we've never talked about use ref. That is a great idea. That's how normally we want to avoid that initial render. I think we could kind of cheat here. I'm going to suggest, what if we check if title is not empty, then proceed to make the call? Because initially when we load the page, title will be an empty string. If it is, we don't want to call fetch article by title because there's no title to really filter on. So can we maybe add a condition in the use effect and say, if our title, let's say, is empty string, just return without doing anything?
Couldn't you just do a ternary and just type title and double and without the if then statements?
No, you can't do that here because we have multiple lines here. So I don't know what we would, yeah, so we could do that and it's trick with the rendering because we're just rendering components. But here we can't do ands for statements because we have multiple statements. I don't know if that is quite clear, but we do need to do an if statement.
Okay, yeah, because we have the console log and we have the articles API. Because everything after articles API is one call, right? So
Yes.
if it wasn't for the console log, we could do it. Okay, thanks.
Yeah, I think you're right. Usually I'd say we probably still wouldn't want to do it, but I think that could work. Again, short circuiting, you don't want to use it too much. It kind of makes your logic a little confusing, but I think for rendering, it's preferred. All right, so yeah, Seth's doing a great job adding comments. Great to see that. So again, I'm not sure if this is going to work, but my idea here is we have two use effects. We only want the first use effect on the screen on line 14. We want that to fire only when we load our homepage the first time. We want to get every single article that exists on our server. After that, the only other request we're going to make is if the user is searching for something, every time they add a character or delete a character, we're going to go into our use effect and get some things. Now, my question is, what if they type like the word hello and then delete all those characters and they get an empty string? We're probably going to get no articles back. So let's deal with that a little later. Let's see how far we have gotten so far. So
just a second, like
Negate that.
should on my
sorry, I'm not sure who's talking there.
Sorry, that
on
was
my
me.
All right, go for it.
go ahead.
Kana, go for it.
Okay, on line 24, should that not be title not equal to empty string?
Yes, you are correct. So Seth, I would recommend putting that not in part of your equal. So you want to do not equal. You could negate the value of title. I think that would work because I think empty string is falsy, so you can negate it. But yeah, I think this is usually the better way to compare not equals. So okay, yeah, good catch there, Kana. Michael, did you have a question, comment?
Same thing.
Gotcha. Good eyes. All right, let's give this a try, Seth, and see if our search actually does anything. Let's search for Nemo because we know Nemo is something in there. All right, we got Nemo articles. How many Nemo articles do we find here? Just 4 of them.
4 of them, and that's how many we got when we ran the initial filter.
Perfect. I think that's working correctly. So I think one thing that might not be working, try deleting Nemo one by one, like one character at a time. All right, so we delete one, another one. What happens when we get to an empty string? Okay, I think we're probably missing articles right now. So I think the issue here is right now, we updated our state value of title to be empty string because we just deleted the last character. But with our logic that we just added, we're not going to get another fetch request. So we're missing, we're at the articles that have N in them. Let's try if you can start with maybe an X, type in XOQ, I don't know. All right, so we know articles, let's delete these. Do these have X in them? I guess they do. So can you verify, do all these articles that are shown right now have X's in them?
Yep, so
Yeah. So again, we're currently filtered on articles that only have X in them, even though we cleared our filter. So that's I guess an issue with our implementation here. So you might need to special case that. Again, there are different ways you can go about it, but we got the majority of the functionality. Again, maybe might want to, I'll leave it to Seth and I guess the rest of you guys to figure out maybe how we can circumvent this small issue. Again, maybe the solution I suggested of checking for empty string might be kind of too hacky. I don't know. Kind of just think about it, see how we can kind of work around that.
Yeah,
Yep.
I am curious about the solution, I guess, because that's kind of where I got stuck. I didn't quite implement it this exact way, but it's almost like what I want to do is be able to call the other use effect
Yeah.
and get those, but I don't know how to I can't call that other use effect. I was thinking force render somehow the other one. I don't know. I'd be at this point, I've been spending some time on it and I'm kind of lost on how I might do it. So I don't know.
Sure.
If anybody out there has a thought, I don't
No.
know.
Yeah,
I'm
we can
not
talk
trying
about it.
to
So-
put a spoiler out there, but I'm kind of at a stuck point on this one.
No, I have to discuss it. So I'll be honest, when I implemented this, I used a single use effect and did sort of what I think Michael was suggesting. So since I had a single use effect, I had a condition where if I had empty string, I would call fetch articles. If I didn't have an empty string, I'd call fetch articles by title. So that was all in one function. So that use effect will do the correct thing depending on kind of what the state of title was. So we could do that. I'm trying to figure out if we could still achieve it with two use effects. I feel like there's probably a solution. I know Kevin suggested using a use ref. That would probably work. Again, the whole idea of using use ref is you have a value that just tracks, is this our first render? Yes or no? I guess actually that still will not fix it because empty string would still cause us this issue, I think. I'm not actually sure what fetch articles by title would return if you pass it an empty string. Would it return everything or return nothing? Probably everything. So anyone have any ideas out there on how we could still achieve this with two use effects? I mean, there are hacky solutions for sure. Like we create a new state value that's called do refresh, and then the refresh would trigger the first use effect. Again, not the greatest solution. There are multiple ways to achieve the same thing. I'm trying to think of a good elegant solution here. But if anyone has suggestions, feel free to suggest it. If not, you might want to go maybe a little hackier route. But
I was thinking dropping this function underneath, with a, but that kind of it's redundant in code a little bit.
mm-hmm.
But an if else, where this would take that.
Yeah, I think that would work, but as it is now, we're going to call our API twice. So this effectively, we don't need our first use effect anymore if we do this. So if you could you comment out the first use effect? I think without the first use effect, having it as an if else, that should work. So let's give that a try. All right, so that didn't match anything. Yep, there we go. So we got our Nostrum
Nice.
AO back. Yeah, so again, that is the way I went about it. But I'm not saying it can't be achieved with two different use effects. You probably just gotta get a little more creative on how you prevent redundant API calls and also make sure you make the API calls you need to. Okay, so we got our search functionality going. Seth, thanks so much for kind of volunteering to be our coding pilot there. There are a couple stress challenges that we added. Again, if you finish the search functionality, the two stretch kind of extended challenges. All right, one, we implemented this for our homepage. What if, there's nothing really stopping us from adding this for our section page? There are some hurdles along the way. One being the section page uses an API that uses a filter in the request. Well, when we're searching for something off the homepage, we use a filter for the title. When we go to the section page, we use a filter for the section. But now we need to kind of combine those filters if you want to search on a section page. Does that kind of make sense? So that would require some thought there. Again, you should not really write another method for it. You should be able to kind of leverage a lot of the logic we have and maybe add some additional logic that will reuse the function calls that we have. Also, in addition, so if you go down that challenge, think about where you might need to kind of relocate some items. So currently the home page is the one housing your search bar. that's probably not going to make sense to kind of add a separate search bar to your section page, because that's doing the same functionality and you have repeated kind of elements. Again, the same principles as OOP apply. If you have the same elements kind of repeated, you probably want to centralize that in somewhere. Maybe in another component, maybe create a new component that you can kind of share between them. You guys can kind of think about that. And the final challenge isn't really React specific, but it's, if you kind of think about it, this isn't the most efficient design in terms of, if we had like 4 million articles, every time you type something, it's going to have to fetch through up to 4 million articles. And that's, API calls are relatively slow because they're gonna be happening over the web. So it's not, you want to avoid making as many API calls as you can. So in this case, you could totally get searching working without relying on the search filter to make to get your articles. What I mean by that is just get all your articles and do your filtering on the client side. Don't even rely on the server. So again, that's a stretch challenge. Also, if you want to kind of just figure out, all right, API calls are bad. How can I avoid doing them but still have the functionality? So those are your 2 additional stretch challenges for new site 4. Okay, thanks for Seth. Thank you to Morgan. Morgan, I think we lost you halfway through. Glad to see you back here. I'm not sure what happened, but yeah. So Morgan started us off with new site 4, and then Seth took us home with the search functionality.